The event ended in uneasy murmurs, donors whispering, board members exchanging looks. Rowan kept his mask on until the last guest left, his hand never leaving mine, his grip bruising. But when the doors closed, the mask shattered. He shoved me against the wall, his eyes wild. "You think you've won," he hissed. "You think papers and whispers will save you." His breath was hot, venomous. "You're not fighting me, Arden. You're fighting an empire. And empires don't fall because of women with secrets in their shoes." I met his gaze, fear clawing at me, but something colder rising beneath it. "Empires," I whispered, "fall from the inside." For a moment, silence hung between us. Then his lips curled in a smile, not of charm but of menace. "Then perhaps," he said softly, "you should ask yourself which one of your new little friends is helping me burn you down." My stomach dropped. The room spun. He wasn't just guessing. He knew. The ally who had slipped me that draft, who had circled the words filed but not finalized, the one who had kept me alive. Rowan was hinting they might not be my savior at all. They might already belong to him. And if that was true, every move I'd made was already in his hands. That's where I'll leave you tonight. So tell me, viewers, what would you do if your only lifeline, your only ally in the dark, might actually be tied to your enemy? Would you cut ties and stand alone? Or risk trusting them one more time? Drop your thoughts and don't forget to subscribe, because Chapter 10 is the final reckoning, the night everything comes crashing down. Chapter 10. The gavel slammed, and the sound ricocheted through the courtroom like thunder. All eyes turned toward me. My hands were clasped in my lap, the stolen file resting inside a neat folder on the table before me. Across the room, Rowan sat in his tailored suit, smug and composed, Celia at his side like a queen mother at her throne. Their lawyers flanked them, polished, predatory, ready to shred me into pieces. The judge's voice echoed. "We are here to address claims of financial misconduct, disputed estates, and alleged coercion. Both parties will be heard." My heart pounded, but my face stayed still. That was the part Rowan never understood. He thought fear would make me scream, break, collapse. He never understood that silence can be sharper than any blade. Rowan's lawyer rose first, his voice smooth, dripping false sympathy. "Your Honor, what we have here is a grieving young woman, confused, unstable, deeply overwhelmed. We respect her pain, but her accusations are built on paranoia and misplaced blame. My client, Mr. Rowan Harwood, has dedicated his life to philanthropy. These claims are an insult not only to him, but to this community." Murmurs rippled through the room. Some nodded, some frowned. I felt every eye flicker between Rowan's mask of composure and my calm stillness. Then Celia leaned forward, her voice carefully trembling, the performance perfected. "She has been under so much strain. We only ever wanted to help her, guide her. But she keeps pushing us away, making these wild stories." Her hand gagged like imaginary tears. "It's heartbreaking." For a moment, the tide turned their way. The crowd believed them. I could feel it. The weight pressed down like a stone on my chest. But then came my turn. I rose slowly, the folder in my hands. My voice was quiet, steady. "I'm not here to perform," I said, my eyes sweeping the room. "I'm not here to scream. I'm here to show you what was hidden." I opened the folder. The first document slid free. Mara's deed. Her signature, forged, redirected. Gasps filled the air. The second paper. Timestamps from the financial freeze, proving Rowan's accounts had been halted under suspicion of fraud. His lawyers shifted, uneasy. The third. Metadata from the very drafts Celia had hidden, the ones slipped to me in secret. Their timestamps betrayed them. Files edited at midnight, altered signatures, names replaced. I laid them out like a quiet row of graves. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The silence after each paper spoke louder than any accusation could. Rowan's mask cracked. For the first time, his voice rose. "These are fabrications. She's twisting everything." But the judge leaned forward, eyes hard. "Mr. Harwood, These documents bear your electronic signature and traceable metadata. If they are fabrications, they are yours. The room erupted. Whispers, gasps, cameras clicking. Rowan's face drained of color. Celia's hand clutched his arm, nails digging into his sleeve. In that moment everything shifted. The empire he had built on stolen legacies crumbled. Not with a scream, not with a fight, but with quiet proof laid bare under the light. Rowan's lawyers scrambled, asking for recess, for delays. But the damage was done. A settlement was whispered, desperate, hurried. Assets frozen, control stripped, names restored. By the end of the day, I walked out of that courthouse not as his wife, not as his victim, but as myself. Ardenvale. My name intact. My story mine again. Outside, the sky was gray, heavy with the promise of rain. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed. I said nothing. I didn't need to. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just steady. But I'll tell you this, viewers. If you take anything from my story, let it be this. Don't let anyone write you out of your own life. Don't let silence be your erasure. Make silence your weapon. And above all, protect the stories of those who cannot fight for themselves. Because Rowan wasn't just one man. He was a system that thrives when good people look away. And systems only fall when quiet courage refuses to back down. That night, I returned to the house one last time. My things were packed. The halls were eerily still, the portraits on the walls staring as if waiting for their next victim. In my room, beneath the floorboard, I found the last piece of paper, the one slipped to me weeks ago, circled in red ink, filed but not finalized. But now, scrawled at the bottom in the same mysterious hand, new words had appeared. You were never alone. My breath caught. Whoever had helped me, whoever had risked everything to slip me those breadcrumbs, had stayed hidden. Maybe it was a clerk. Maybe it was a staff member forced to spy, who chose instead to save me. Maybe I'll never know. But I do know this. Even in the darkest halls, someone out there chose to light a match. Viewers, let me ask you something. What would you have done if you were me? Would you have walked into that courthouse with silence and papers? Or would you have screamed the truth no matter who believed you? Share your thoughts below, because your words may give courage to someone else fighting a quiet battle right now. And don't forget, subscribe, turn on your notifications, because this channel isn't just about my story. There are more voices waiting to be heard, more hidden battles, more confessions of quiet justice. The fight isn't over. Not for me. Not for you. And not for the countless lives nearly erased by people who thought they could rewrite the truth. That's where my story closes. But it's also where the next begins. At my wedding reception, I threw a celebration toast. Right before the champagne, I watched my mother-in-law slip something into my glass. When no one was looking, I quietly switched glasses with her. 10 minutes later, she began to. Chapter 1. The ballroom shimmered with golden light. The chandeliers sparkled so brightly that for a second, I thought the stars themselves had come down to witness me on the most important night of my life. The air carried that sweet mix of roses, champagne, and polished silver. Music swelled, cameras flashed, and laughter rose around me. It was my wedding reception, my day, my moment, my beginning. I stood at the center of it all, the bride with a glass in my hand, ready to give my toast. I should have been the happiest woman alive. But then I saw it. Her hand. Graceful, manicured, steady as stone. My new mother-in-law, Celia Draycott. She leaned over, smooth as silk, and let something drop into my glass. Just a flick of her wrist. Just a tiny movement that could have been nothing at all. But I saw the ripple. I saw the way the champagne fizzed differently. It wasn't an accident. My chest tightened, but no one else noticed. Celia sat back in her chair, her face calm, elegant as ever. Her lips curved into that smile she always wore, the one that never reached her eyes. She didn't even look at me. She didn't have to. My blood ran cold. 1,000 voices filled the room, laughter bouncing like glass beads. The band played a slow swing. Guests leaned forward with their flutes raised, waiting for me. I could feel the weight of 100 expectant eyes. And I knew in that moment, I had seconds to decide what kind of bride I was going to be. The silent victim, or something else. I slid my glass across the white draped table. No one noticed. I placed her untouched flute in front of me and raised it like nothing had happened. My lips pulled into a smile that didn't belong to me. My voice rose above the clinking silverware and the shuffling feet, trembling but steady enough. To family, I said, my throat dry as stone. To love. And to truth. The kind of truth that lasts forever. The room erupted in cheer. Glasses collided. Champagne sparkled. Laughter bubbled up like it had earlier. But I kept my eyes on her. Celia lifted the glass, my glass, and sipped. I held my breath as the sweetness of champagne hit my tongue. For 10 minutes nothing happened. 10 long minutes of forced laughter, of guests spinning on the dance floor, of relatives patting my shoulder and whispering blessings in my ear. Then her smile faltered. Celia's hand twitched. Her eyes darted around, searching. Her skin went pale under the golden light. She shifted as if trying to stand, but her body betrayed her. She collapsed forward, the crystal glass shattering against the marble with a sound that cut through every conversation. The music stopped mid-note. Gasp. Rowan, my husband of just a few hours, rushed to catch her as she crumpled in his arms. The room turned to chaos, voices overlapping, chairs scraping against the floor, shouts for help rising above the crowd. And me. I just stood there, frozen, my hand still lifted with my toast unfinished, watching the world tilt. All eyes slid toward me. The flashing lights of cell phones lit up the scene. Someone screamed for an ambulance. Someone else whispered too loudly. The bride, she didn't drink hers. And just like that, suspicion coiled around me tighter than my wedding gown. I wish I could tell you that was the end. That after that night, truth surfaced quickly. Justice was done and love saved me. But the truth. That night was only the beginning. Before I go further, if you're still here listening, make sure you're subscribed, because what happened next is something you won't want to miss. This isn't just a wedding story. This is about betrayal, quiet revenge, and how I almost disappeared from my own life until I found the courage to fight back. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family, enjoy the story. When the paramedics rushed in, the ballroom was silent but for the pounding of my heart. They lifted Celia onto a stretcher, her sequined dress shimmering under the harsh red and blue of the ambulance lights. The siren wailed as they carried her away. I saw the way her friends looked at me, their eyes sharp, their whispers cutting deeper than knives. Rowan didn't look at me at all. He walked beside his mother, his hand clutching hers as though I weren't even there. Back inside the mansion, I sat alone in the bridal suite. The veil was gone, the bouquet wilted, and my hands shook against the silk sheets. The walls pressed in. Outside, muffled footsteps and hushed voices buzzed like a hive. Not one of them came to check on me. Not Rowan. Not his sisters. No one. By morning, the silence grew thicker. A tray appeared at my door. Tea, croissants, berries dusted with sugar. The steam curled up sweet and warm, but I couldn't bring myself to touch it. I didn't trust anything anymore. I pressed my finger against the fogged windowpane and wrote a single word backward, watching it glow faint in the morning light. Truth. That was all I had left. Rowan avoided me. He came home late, spoke in clipped words, and vanished again. When he did look at me, it was with suspicion tucked neatly behind his polite smile. His family's lawyer sent carefully crafted notes. The family appreciates your cooperation during this sensitive time. Cooperation. As if I were already under arrest. As if my silence was a confession. No one had accused me outright, but I was already guilty in their eyes. The bride who had poisoned her new mother-in-law felt erased, like I'd married into a family and within a week been cast out, left wandering their halls like a ghost no one wanted to acknowledge. One night, restless and sleepless, I found myself standing outside Celia's office. The door was slightly ajar, a crack of light spilling into the dark hallway. Something pulled me in. The room smelled faintly of leather and polish. Books lined the walls like guards, silent and watchful. Papers were stacked high on her desk, neat but precarious. I shouldn't have touched them, but my hand reached out anyway. Buried halfway down the stack, I found it. A slim, unassuming folder. When I opened it, my breath caught. Documents. Insurance policies. Property deeds. A will. At first it seemed ordinary, just financial housekeeping. But then I saw it. Name. Typed cleanly in one draft. struck out in another. On a property deed, my initials faint, almost erased, like someone had gone out of their way to remove me from the page. My skin prickled. This wasn't random. This was careful. Deliberate. Celia's signature decorated the bottom of each page, but the handwriting in the margins, the sharp arrows, the edits, the corrections, didn't look like hers. Someone else's hand guided these changes. Someone who wanted me written out. I clutched the folder tighter, my pulse hammering in my ears. The air seemed heavier, thicker, as though the room itself knew a secret it was daring me to uncover. And then I heard it. Footsteps in the hall. Low. Heavy. Coming closer. The doorknob rattled. My chest constricted as the crack of light narrowed, then widened again. A shadow stretched across the floor. I froze, the folder still in my hands. And that, right there, is where I'll leave you for now. If you were in my place, standing in that office with papers that could change everything, and a shadow about to catch you red-handed, what would you do? Hide the evidence? Or confront them head-on? Tell me in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe because trust me, what happens next is darker, stranger, and more dangerous than anything you can imagine. This was only the beginning. Chapter 2. The door creaked open before I could even think. My hands gripped the folder so tightly that my knuckles turned white. The papers felt like they were burning in my palms, branding me with secrets I wasn't meant to touch. The shadow stretched across the office floor, long and heavy, like a curtain falling on my escape. I had two choices: shove the folder back where I found it and pretend I was lost, or keep it and risk being caught red-handed. Chose the second. I slipped the folder beneath the folds of my gown just as the door swung wide. Rowan stood there, his tie loosened, his face drawn. For a moment, I thought he looked almost human again, worried, tired, vulnerable. But then his eyes narrowed, landing on me. "What are you doing in here?" His voice wasn't angry yet, just careful. Too careful. I forced a smile that didn't reach my chest. I couldn't sleep. I was looking for a book. His gaze slid to the desk, the papers still slightly askew from my search. His jaw tightened. "You shouldn't be in my mother's office." I nodded quickly, stepping toward the door, brushing past him. My heart thudded so loudly, I wondered if he could hear it. "You're right. I'll go." But as I passed him, I caught something. His eyes flicked, just for a second, down to my waist. As though he knew. As though he could see right through the silk of my gown, straight to the folder pressed against my body. That was the moment I realized. Rowan wasn't just suspicious of me. He was hiding something too. The days that followed blurred into silence. Celia remained in the hospital, sedated. Her condition described as unstable but managed. The family's friends circled like vultures, whispering, watching, weighing me with their eyes. Rowan barely came home. And when he did, he locked himself in his study. I carried the folder everywhere, tucked in a hidden compartment of my suitcase, as if it were a living thing that might vanish if I let it out of my sight. At night, when the house was quiet, I spread the documents on the floor, studying them in the dim glow of a bedside lamp. It wasn't just a will. It was layers of them. Draft after draft, rewritten, redated, reshaped. In one, Celia left her estate to Rowan and his sisters. In another, certain properties vanished, transferred to names I didn't recognize. In yet another, there was a clause about Rowan's marriage. Clause that mentioned me. That clause was missing from the final draft. Cleanly cut out, as though I had never existed. I traced the sharp edge of the red ink where my name had been crossed out. My chest ached. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about property. It was about erasure. About someone deciding that I didn't belong in this family's story. That my very existence on paper was a threat they needed to remove. And I couldn't shake the memory. Celia's hand, slipping something into my glass. That wasn't an accident. That wasn't paranoia. That was a message. One night, as the grandfather clock struck 2, I caught myself whispering out loud. "What did you want from me, Celia? Why erase me?" Silence answered back. Only the ticking of the clock, steady and merciless. If you're still watching, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt erased? Like someone looked right through you, pretending you weren't even there? Tell me in the comments, because I need to know I'm not the only one who's lived through that kind of quiet betrayal. The next morning, the phone rang. I expected a friend checking in. Maybe even Rowan. But the voice on the other end was brisk, professional, cold. "Mrs. Draycott," the caller said. This is the hospital. We need to ask you a few questions about the night of the incident. The incident? My wedding night reduced to a crime report. I agreed to come in, but when I arrived, I wasn't led to Celia's room. Instead, I was ushered into a small white office, where a detective sat waiting. His badge glinted. His notepad was already open. He didn't waste time. You didn't drink your champagne, Mrs. Draycott. Your mother-in-law did. Tell me why. The walls seemed to close in. My mouth opened but no sound came out. He watched me, his pen hovering like a blade. I wanted to scream that I had seen her hand, that I knew she had tried to trap me. But the words tangled in my throat. Because who would believe me? Who ever believes the bride over the mother? So I said nothing. Just silence. That silence, I would learn, was the most dangerous thing I could have chosen. Rowan didn't speak to me at all after that. Not a word. Just a look. Cold, sharp, accusing. He didn't even try to hide it anymore. And every time I looked at him, I wondered, was it really Celia's hand that poisoned me that night? Or was she just the mask for someone else's plan? Late one evening, I returned to the office again. My chest pounded with fear, but I needed answers. I searched deeper this time, rifling through drawers, cabinets, hidden compartments. And that's when I found it. Another envelope taped beneath the desk. Inside were photographs. Grainy, time-stamped, printed on glossy paper. Photos of me. Taken in the weeks before the wedding. The grocery store. Walking to my car. Sitting in a cafe. Always from a distance. Always with me at the center, unaware. My blood ran cold. Someone had been watching me long before I married into this family. This wasn't about one night. This was about a plan. A story they had written, one where I was meant to disappear. And as I clutched those photos, the door behind me clicked shut. This time it wasn't Rowan. It was his sister. Her lips curled into something between a smile and a sneer. You shouldn't be in here, she said softly. But then again, you shouldn't have married him either. And she reached for the envelope in my hand. If you were me, standing there with proof that someone had been watching you, and Rowan's sister trying to take it away, would you fight back, or play it calm and clever? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And make sure you subscribe because what happens in Chapter 3 is when the masks finally start to slip. This story is only getting darker. Chapter 3. Her hand hovered in the air between us, delicate but sharp, like a hawk ready to snatch its prey. The dim desk lamp caught her features. The same blue eyes as Rowan, the same sharp jawline, but colder, harder, and with none of the love I once thought might exist in this family. Give it to me, she said. Not loud, not frantic. Dangerous. I clutched the envelope tighter, my pulse hammering in my throat. My instinct screamed to run, but where? The door was behind her. The windows were latched. And the hallway, if I even made it there, would echo with every desperate step. I don't know what this is, I lied, my voice shaking. I was just cleaning up. Her lips twitched into something that wasn't quite a smile. You think you're clever. She took a slow step closer. You think marrying my brother gave you a seat at the table. But all it gave you, she leaned in so close I could feel her breath brush my cheek, was a target on your back. The room tilted. My knees trembled, but I refused to step back. If I showed fear, I knew she'd win. What's in here? I asked, lifting the envelope. Why were these taken of me? Who's behind this? Her hand darted forward, lightning fast, but I twisted away. The envelope slipped, the photographs spilling across the floor like broken glass. They scattered under the desk, beneath chairs, across the polished wood. Her eyes widened, not with panic but with rage. We both dropped to our knees, scrambling. Fingers brushed paper. Photos flipped under palms. I snatched one up, my eyes catching the timestamp. A week before the wedding. Me, standing outside my apartment with my suitcase, unaware of the lens aimed at me. Another photo. Me in a cafe, head bent over my notebook, a shadowy reflection in the window behind me. Watching. Always watching. Her fingers clamped down on my wrist. Stop looking, she hissed. You don't need to see this. Then why does it exist? My voice cracked, but I didn't care. The fury boiled up now, hotter than my fear. Why was I being followed before I even joined your family? Her nails dug into my skin, sharp as claws. She leaned closer, her eyes flashing. Because you were never meant to stay. The words pierced me deeper than any knife. And then a sound. Heavy footsteps in the hall. Both our heads snapped up. Rowan's voice, low and tired, calling her name. Panic flared in her eyes. She ripped the last handful of photos from the floor and stuffed them into her pocket. I clutched the two I still held, pressing them against my chest. The doorknob rattled. Rowan stepped in, his face shadowed by the hallway light. He froze, eyes darting between us, the scattered papers, the tension thick as smoke. What's going on here? Neither of us spoke. I rose slowly, the photographs trembling in my grip. His sister straightened too, smoothing her hair, her expression sliding back into something poised and innocent. She was snooping, she said simply. Again. Rowan's eyes landed on me. And the silence that followed was worse than any accusation. That night, I locked myself in the guest bedroom, shaking as I slid the photographs under the mattress. I couldn't let them go, not yet. They were the only proof I had that something larger was happening. Something deliberate. But proof meant nothing if no one believed me. The following morning, whispers followed me everywhere. In the kitchen, in the hall, even from the staff, who lowered their eyes when I entered. It was like poison in the air, unspoken, invisible but suffocating. I started to feel like maybe that had been the plan all along. To make me doubt myself. To make me question every sound, every shadow until I crumbled. But then, something happened that changed everything. A message slid under my door. The paper was plain, folded once. No signature. Just 4 words scrawled in tight handwriting. She's not the only one. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. My heart raced. Whoever left this knew what I had found. And they were telling me the truth ran deeper than Celia, or even her daughter. If you've been following along, here's what I need you to do. Drop in the comments what you think those words mean. Was it a warning? A threat? Or was it someone trying to help me from the inside? I spent that night pacing the small room, the note burning in my palm. My mind spun with questions. Who left it? Why now? And most of all, what did they want from me? But I wouldn't have long to wonder. Because the next evening, when I returned to the house after a walk to clear my head, I found my suitcase dragged into the hallway. My clothes spilled across the floor. And standing over them was Rowan. His face was unreadable. His hands clenched at his sides. The air crackled between us, full of words unspoken. Where did you get those photos? He asked finally, his voice low, dangerous. Froze. He knew. And in that moment I realized the truth. The person I thought I had married, the man I believed would protect me, might be the very reason those photographs existed at all. If you were me, standing there with your husband demanding answers, would you tell him the truth and risk everything, or lie and buy yourself more time? Drop your answer below, and don't forget to subscribe because Chapter 4 is where the walls close in and the real game begins. Chapter 4. The hallway was cold. Not from the air, but from Rowan's eyes. He stood over my belongings, every piece of clothing exposed under the chandelier's harsh light like evidence in a crime scene. The photographs, my photographs, were clutched in his hand. His grip was so tight the glossy paper bent under the strain. Where did you get these? His voice was steady, but his jaw flexed with every word. My mouth opened then closed. 1,000 excuses tangled in my throat. I wanted to say I found them by accident, that I didn't mean to. But lies felt like traps. Truth felt like a noose. And silence. Silence was already strangling me. Answer me. His tone cracked, sharp enough to slice through the thick air. I swallowed hard. I found them in your mother's office. For a heartbeat, something flickered across his face. Fear or maybe guilt. But it was gone before I could name it. He shook his head, scoffing. You think you can come into this family and dig around in things you don't understand? You think you know what's happening here? I took a step back, my bare feet brushing against my scattered clothes. Then explain it to me, I whispered. Why were there pictures of me? Why was I being followed before the wedding? What's going on, Rowan? His silence was the loudest answer of all. He turned, tossing the photographs onto the floor like they were trash. "Pack your things. Stay out of the office. Stay out of my way." His voice dropped, cold and final. "If you want to survive here, don't ask questions you're not prepared to hear the answers to." Then he walked away, his footsteps echoing down the hall, leaving me standing in the wreckage of my own life. I sank to my knees, gathering the crumpled photos. My reflection stared back at me from the glossy paper. Me in cafes, in parking lots, crossing streets. Always unaware. Always watched. My chest tightened. Was this marriage ever about love? Or was it a trap from the start? That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in the corner of the guest room, my knees hugged to my chest. The photographs spread around me like puzzle pieces. I stared at them until dawn broke through the curtains. And with the first light came a decision. If Rowan wouldn't give me answers, I'd find them myself. But the house felt like a prison now. Every creak of the floorboards made me flinch. Every glance from his sister made me wonder what she knew. Every locked door reminded me of the secrets I wasn't meant to uncover. On the third day of silence, I snuck back into Celia's office. My hands trembled, but determination carried me forward. I needed more. I needed something concrete. I searched the desk again, then the drawers. Nothing. Finally, I slid my fingers along the underside of the desk's surface. Something scratched against my nails. I tugged, pulling free another envelope. Inside were drafts of emails. Not printed letters, but screenshots. Images of correspondence saved deliberately. They were addressed to a lawyer. And my name appeared in every single one. In one, Celia wrote, "She cannot have access. If Rowan insists, we need to prepare the documents now." In another, the lawyer replied, "We can make adjustments to the deed before final filing. The bride will not need to be informed." And in the last, dated only days before the wedding, "Once it's done, she won't have any claim." My stomach churned. They hadn't just erased me. They had planned it carefully, step by step, leaving a paper trail that was almost invisible, unless you knew where to look. For the first time I felt something stronger than fear. Felt anger. Cold. Focused. Quiet. If you're still here listening, I want to ask you something. What would you do if you found proof that your new family had been plotting to erase you before you even said your vows? Would you confront them directly, or gather every piece of evidence in silence, waiting for the right moment? Tell me in the comments, because your answer might just show me I'm not crazy for what I did next. I tucked the envelope into the lining of my bag, careful not to disturb the order. My heartbeat thundered in my ears as I left the office, forcing my face into calm when I passed a maid in the hall. She glanced at me strangely, as though she knew I didn't belong in those rooms. That evening I received another note. It was slipped under my door again, folded tight. But this time the handwriting was different. Sharper, cleaner. Only 3 words stared back at me. "Check the attic." My hands shook as I read it again and again. Who was leaving these messages? Were they leading me into a trap, or pulling me toward the truth? At midnight, I climbed the narrow staircase to the attic. The air grew colder with every step, thick with dust and the faint smell of cedar. The single bulb overhead flickered weakly, casting shadows that stretched like claws across the slanted ceiling. Boxes stacked high, marked with faded labels. Christmas decor. Old linens. Tax records. I moved carefully, pushing aside cobwebs, until I found a box tucked in the corner. Its label was missing. I dragged it into the light, pried it open. Inside were more photographs. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. But not just of me. Of others. Women. Some alone, some with Rowan, smiling at dinners, on vacations, in places I didn't recognize. All timestamp. All ending abruptly. Months, sometimes weeks, before mine began. My stomach dropped. My hands trembled as I flipped through them. These weren't random. These were patterns. Women who came before me. Women who vanished. And then, at the very bottom of the box, I found something that froze my blood. A marriage license. Not mine. Rowan's. Dated years before, with another woman's name signed beside his. A woman I had never heard of. A woman who, according to the records, should still be alive. My breath caught. My chest constricted. The room tilted around me. That's when the floorboards creaked. I whipped around. At the top of the stairs stood Rowan, his face shadowed. His eyes locked on the box in front of me. "Put it back," he said quietly. Deadly quiet. "And that's where I'll leave you for now. Tell me this. If you discovered your spouse had a hidden past full of erased women, would you confront them in that moment, or play along until you could escape?" Drop your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe because Chapter 5 is where everything you thought you knew about Rowan, and about me, will shatter. Chapter 5. Rowan's shadow stretched across the attic floor before I even dared to look him in the eyes. His figure filled the narrow doorway, blocking my only way out. The single bulb swayed slightly overhead, its weak glow catching in his hair, throwing his face into shifting slices of light and darkness. His voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Put it back." 3 words. Soft but sharper than any scream. My heart thudded so loudly I thought he could hear it. The photographs slipped in my trembling hands. The marriage license at the bottom of the box stared back at me like a ghost. Proof of lives erased, secrets buried. I swallowed, trying to wet the desert dryness in my mouth. "Rowan, what is this?" My voice was too thin, too fragile. He took a step closer, his shoes creaking against the old boards. I said, "Put back." Every instinct screamed at me to obey, but something inside me resisted. For weeks I had been living like a shadow in my own home, suffocating under suspicion and half-answers. Now, with this box at my feet, I realized something chilling. I wasn't the first. I forced my hands to stay steady as I slid the photographs back into the box, but I kept my eyes locked on his. "You should explain," I whispered. "You owe me that much." His lips curved, not into a smile but something colder, more practiced. "Oh, you." He let out a hollow laugh. "You're in this house because of me. You eat because of me. You wear those dresses because of me. And you think I owe you." He crouched low, placing one hand on the edge of the box, his face inches from mine. His breath smelled faintly of whiskey. "You don't ask questions here, Arden. You stay quiet, you stay beautiful, and you don't dig where you don't belong. That's how this works." His use of my name, spoken like a command, not an endearment, made my stomach twist. I wanted to shrink away, but I couldn't show weakness now. I sat frozen, clutching one photograph in my palm, hidden against my thigh. A picture of a woman I didn't recognize, her smile wide, her eyes bright, her hand resting on Rowan's arm. Had to know. "Who is she?" I asked softly. His gaze flickered just for a moment. Enough. He knew exactly which woman I was talking about. "That's none of your concern," he said quickly, standing again, towering over me. "These are old memories. Buried. Like they should be." Something about the way he said buried sent a chill racing down my spine. "If they're nothing," I whispered, "then why hide them in the attic?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached down, yanked the photograph from my hand, and shoved it back into the box. Then he snapped the lid closed so forcefully dust clouded into the air. "You want this marriage to last." His tone hardened, final. "Then you'll forget you ever came up here." I tried to steady my breath, tried to quiet the storm in my chest, but inside I was screaming. Forget. How could I forget a box full of women, a license belonging to someone who should still exist? He leaned closer, his voice barely audible, like a secret wrapped in a threat. "I won't warn you again." Then he grabbed the box, cradled it under his arm, and brushed past me. I was too stunned to move until I heard the attic stairs creak under his weight, his footsteps descending into the darkness below. I didn't follow. Not immediately. I stood frozen, my knees weak, my pulse a wild drumbeat in my ears. When I finally descended hours later, the house was silent. Too silent. I went to the guest room and locked the door, my fingers trembling as I turned the key. I slid down against the wood, pressing my back to it, and let the tears spill over. But beneath the tears, something hardened in me. Rowan wanted silence. His mother wanted obedience. They both wanted me erased. But I had seen too much. And if you're listening right now, I need to ask you, what would you do if you realized your spouse's past was a graveyard of forgotten women? Would you run while you still could, or would you dig deeper, risking everything for the truth? Drop your thoughts in the comments because tonight I had to decide exactly that. The next morning I woke to find my breakfast tray outside the door. It was different. No notes. No smiles from the staff. Just cold eggs and burned toast, like an insult served on porcelain. I ate none of it. Instead, I went back to the photographs I had managed to hide. Just one, the woman's picture I'd tucked inside the lining of my nightgown pocket when Rowan wasn't looking. I studied her face. She looked young, hopeful, alive. I flipped the photo over. In faint ink, almost smudged away, was a date. And a name. Mura. 2016. The name was like a spark in the dark. Mura. Not erased, not completely. Clue. I searched every corner of the guest room that day, looking for anything else I could use. And that was when I found another message. It was carved, faintly, into the wood under the vanity desk. Almost invisible unless the light hit it just right. 3 words scratched by a desperate hand. Still alive. Run. I froze, my heart hammering so hard I could barely breathe. Someone before me had tried to warn the next. Someone who survived long enough to leave a message. Mara. Another woman. Suddenly I wasn't just terrified. I was furious. Furious that this cycle had gone on. That Rowan and his family thought they could erase women like pages torn from a book. That night Rowan didn't come to me. But Celia did. She entered without knocking, her perfume filling the air like poison. She studied me with eyes that were too sharp, too calculating. Then she smiled. "You're learning," she said. "I heard you've been quiet today." "That's good. Quiet girls last longer in this family." Her words turned my stomach. I forced my lips into something that might have looked like agreement. But inside I was memorizing every detail. The way her diamond brooch caught the lamplight, the faint stain of ink on her left thumb, like she'd been handling papers again. Papers I needed. "Tell me, Arden," she said softly, brushing imaginary lint from her sleeve. "Do you still trust my son?" I hesitated. "Too long." Her smile widened. "Ah, so you've seen too much." For a second I thought she would lunge at me, that she would strike or scream. But she didn't. She simply patted my shoulder, her touch icy. "Remember," she whispered, leaning close enough that her breath tickled my ear. "Everything you think you know can be rewritten. Including you." Then she left, her heels clicking against the hardwood until the sound faded into silence. I collapsed onto the bed, every nerve in my body electric with fear, but also with determination. Had a name. I had a message carved into wood. I wasn't completely powerless. I knew what I had to do next. At dawn, when the house stirred awake, I stole into the library. Its shelves stretched high, filled with dusty volumes that smelled of age and secrets. I wasn't looking for books. I was looking for records. And I found them. Rowan's family kept binders of events, dinners, charities, scrapbooks of their polished public image. I flipped through page after page until I found it. A charity gala in 2016. Rowan stood at the center of the photograph, his arm around her. Mura. She was real. She was there. And then she was gone. No mention of her in later years, no photos, no notes. She had vanished just like the others. But if she was the one who carved that message, maybe she hadn't vanished completely. As I tucked the binder back onto the shelf, a slip of paper fluttered loose. My breath caught as I picked it up. It was an invitation, dated months earlier. A wedding invitation. Rowan's. Tomorrow. My hand shook. He hadn't just dated her. He had married her. And yet she was gone, wiped away, as if she never existed. The room spun. I clutched the shelf to steady myself, the paper damp in my sweaty hand. And then footsteps, approaching fast. I shoved the invitation into my sleeve and turned just as Rowan appeared in the doorway. His eyes scanned the room, narrowing when they landed on me. "What are you doing here?" he asked. I forced a smile. "Just reading." His gaze lingered too long, suspicious. He stepped closer, closing the distance between us. "Stay out of places you don't belong," he warned. His hand brushed my arm, too tight, too possessive. "I don't like liars in my house." My throat tightened. My body screamed to recoil, but I didn't. Couldn't. Had to stay calm. When he finally left, the invitation still burned against my skin, hidden in my sleeve. Proof that Mara was real. Proof that I wasn't imagining any of this. And when I returned to my room that night, there was something new waiting for me. Another folded note, slipped under my door. But this time, the handwriting matched the carved words under the vanity. It read, "Meet me. Midnight. Old greenhouse." My breath caught. Mara was alive. Or someone wanted me to believe she was. And that's where I'll leave you tonight. Tell me in the comments. If you found a note from someone your husband swore never existed, would you risk everything to meet them in the dead of night? Or would you stay locked in the safety of your room? And don't forget to subscribe, because Chapter 6 is where the truth steps out of the shadows. Chapter 6. The air was damp, heavy with the smell of earth and old glass. My shoes crunched softly on gravel as I slipped through the garden path, the moonlight my only guide. The greenhouse loomed ahead, its panes cracked, its frame rusted, but its shape still proud, like a forgotten sentinel watching over the night. My hands trembled as I gripped the folded note in my pocket. Meet me. Midnight. Old greenhouse. Every step closer sent my heart hammering against my ribs. Was this a trap? Was Rowan watching me now, waiting to catch me in another disobedience? Or was this the one chance to finally prove I wasn't losing my mind, that Mara was real, that someone had survived? I reached the greenhouse door and froze. A faint light flickered inside. Not strong but enough to catch my breath. Someone was already there. I pushed the door open, and the hinges groaned in protest. The warm, earthy air rushed out to meet me, carrying the scent of damp soil and rotting leaves. And then I saw her. A woman stood in the far corner, her back half hidden by vines that had overgrown their trellises. She turned slowly, her face caught in the weak glow of a lantern set on the ground. It was her. The woman from the photographs. The one whose name I'd found scrawled in ink. Mara. For a second I couldn't breathe. She looked older than in the pictures, her hair pulled back, strands falling loose around her tired face. But her eyes, the same bright eyes, watched me with a mix of relief and caution. You came, she whispered. I nodded, my throat too tight to form words. She stepped closer, her movements careful, as though the walls themselves might be listening. I didn't know if you'd trust the note. I had to, I finally managed to say. You're Mara. Her lips pressed into a tight line. Yes, or at least I used to be. The words sent a chill through me. Used to be. I took a shaky breath. What happened to you? Why are you here? Why? She held up a hand, cutting me off. Quiet. Questions come later. Right now, you need to understand one thing. She leaned close, her voice barely audible. You're not safe here. None of us ever were. Her words landed like stones in my chest. None of us. Her eyes darted toward the door. I wasn't the first either. There were others before me. Women who disappeared when they stopped being useful to this family. I gripped the edge of a broken table for balance, the world tilting around me. What do you mean disappeared? Mara's gaze softened, filled with something that looked like pity. They cover it up. Papers are rewritten. Records are adjusted. One day you're a wife, the next day it's like you never existed. Their lawyers make it all look clean. No one asks questions because on paper you were never there. Her words twisted in my stomach like a knife. My mind raced back to the emails, the drafts I'd seen in Celia's office. The careful planning, the way my name had been threaded through every sentence about removal. They weren't just paranoid notes. They were blueprints for erasure. Mara stepped closer, her voice shaking now. I escaped because I played along. I pretended to accept it. And when they thought I was broken enough, they loosened their grip. That's how I got out. But I can't leave completely. Not yet. Not without exposing them. The lantern flickered, shadows sliding across her face. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled something out, a folded piece of paper, creased and worn. This, she said, pressing it into my hand. Keep it hidden. It's the first thread. If you're careful, it will lead you to everything else. I opened it just enough to glimpse what was inside. A copy of a property deed, with Rowan's name printed at the top, and a second name below it, scribbled out in thick black ink. I looked up at her, my breath catching. Whose name was this? Before she could answer, a sound outside made us both freeze. A step. Low. Deliberate. Crunching on gravel. Mara's eyes widened. She blew out the lantern, plunging us into darkness. My pulse roared in my ears as we pressed against the damp wall, barely daring to breathe. The footsteps stopped just outside the greenhouse door. The silence stretched so long I thought I'd collapse under the weight of it. Then finally they moved again, fading away into the distance. When I turned back, Mara was gone. Vanished into the shadows as silently as she'd appeared. In my palm, the folded deed remained, damp with my sweat. I stumbled back to the house, every shadow on the path feeling like a hand reaching for me. By the time I slipped into my room, my whole body was shaking. I thought I was safe until I saw it. On my bed, laid neatly on the pillow, was another photograph. Not of Mara. Not of Rowan. Of me. Taken tonight. On the path to the greenhouse. My breath caught. My hands went numb. Someone had followed me. Someone had been watching me every second. And the photograph wasn't just a warning. Scrawled across the bottom, in sharp black ink, were 3 words that made my blood run cold. See you. And that's where I'll stop for tonight. So let me ask you this. If you found proof that someone inside your own house was tracking your every move, would you confront them directly, or pretend you never saw the warning and play the long game? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe, because Chapter 7 is where the mask finally slips, and the danger becomes impossible to ignore. Chapter 7. The photograph slipped from my hands, drifting to the floor like a dead leaf. I couldn't move. My chest seized, every breath shallow, as the words scrawled across the glossy paper seared into my mind. We see you. Urai. Not he. Not she. My skin prickled. This wasn't just Rowan. It wasn't just Celia. This was bigger. The walls, the staff, maybe even the locks on the doors. I was surrounded. I scrambled to the window, pulling the curtains tight, then to the mirror, covering it with a scarf as if someone could see through. My mind spun. Who placed the photo on my pillow? When? While I was in the greenhouse. Did Rowan know I'd gone? Or was this another hand at play? Another set of eyes feeding on my fear? I clutched the folded deed Mara had given me, its edges digging into my palm. Proof. That was all I had. Proof, and now a warning. I sank onto the bed, burying my face in my hands. My whole body trembled, but I forced myself to whisper aloud. You wanted me quiet. But I won't disappear. By morning my decision felt like steel inside me. I'd play the role. I'd smile when they wanted me to. I'd nod when they demanded obedience. But in silence I'd dig deeper. At breakfast, Celia poured tea like nothing was wrong, her hands elegant, precise. Rowan skimmed the newspaper, his expression unreadable. Neither mentioned the greenhouse. Neither asked about my night. But I felt it, the unspoken weight pressing against me, daring me to slip. Sleep well, darling, Rowan asked finally, his eyes flicking up just long enough to pin me in place. My throat tightened, but I forced a smile. Like a dream. His lips curved, but his eyes didn't. That was when I realized. They already knew. They just wanted to see if I'd confess. If you were me right now, sitting at that table with enemies dressed as family, would you keep pretending everything was normal? Or would you throw the truth across the table and risk the storm? Let me know in the comments, because every second I held my tongue felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Later that day, I locked myself in the guest room under the excuse of a headache. I pulled out the deed Mara had given me, smoothing its creases on the desk. The blacked-out name glared back at me, a shadow begging to be revealed. I ran my fingers over the ink, noticing the faint indentation where the pen had once written clearly. If I could trace it, if I could lift the shadow of the name. But I had no tools, no chemicals, nothing but determination. Instead, I studied the address printed at the bottom of the deed. Property outside town. Place Rowan owned in secret. My pulse quickened. If I could get there, if I could see what he was hiding, maybe I'd finally have leverage. The floor creaked outside my door. I shoved the paper back into the lining of my dress and opened the door to find a maid carrying towels. But her eyes lingered too long on me, on the desk behind me. Too long for comfort. That's when it hit me. The staff weren't neutral. They were watchers. Informants. That night, as I prepared for bed, I left the lamp on purposefully dim. I sat at the desk, pen scratching against paper as if I were writing a harmless letter. Instead I drew a map, my first breadcrumb. The property's address at the top, Mara's name beside it. I folded it small, tucking it deep into the seam of my shoe. If they tried to erase me, they wouldn't erase everything. Not this time. Days blurred together, each one heavier with tension. Rowan grew colder, Celia sharper. I felt eyes on me at every turn. Then came the accident. I was walking down the back staircase. Narrow, steep, the kind no guests ever used, when the railing gave way beneath my hand. My body pitched forward, the steps rushing up toward me. At the last second, my hand caught the edge of the wall, pain tearing through my arm as I stopped myself from falling headfirst. I gasped, clutching the railing's broken wood. The screws were stripped clean. Not loose. Removed. Someone wanted me to fall. I staggered back to my room, my arm throbbing, my breath ragged. On the desk, a new item awaited me. Not a photograph this time. A folded sheet of paper. My blood ran cold as I unfolded it. It was one of the legal drafts I'd seen in Celia's office, the ones that plotted my erasure. But something was different. A single line of text was circled in red ink, filed but not finalized. At the bottom, in the corner, were 3 words written in a hand I didn't recognize. You have time. My knees buckled. This wasn't Rowan. This wasn't Celia. Someone else was inside this game. Someone who wanted me to fight. For the first time in weeks, hope flared in my chest. Small, fragile, but real. But hope is dangerous. And as I tucked the paper into my shoe beside the map, I knew this. If they suspected I had help, the next accident wouldn't leave me standing. That's where I'll pause tonight. So tell me, viewers, if you discovered someone inside your enemy's camp was secretly helping you, would you trust them fully? Or would you suspect another trap? Drop your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe, because Chapter 8 is where the silent war begins to break wide open. Chapter 8. The paper burned in my pocket all night, its message haunting me. You have time. Time for what? To escape. To fight. To survive one more day. By morning, the question was pounding in my head. The circled line, filed but not finalized, played like a drumbeat. Someone had slipped that draft onto my desk. Someone who knew the details of Rowan and Celia's plan. Someone risking everything to warn me. The danger was suffocating, but the hint was oxygen. For the first time, I had more than just scraps. Had a window. The address from Mara's deed was still hidden in my shoe, folded small. My plan began to form like a shadow. I needed to see the property. I needed to know what Rowan had been hiding so desperately he would risk erasing me to cover it up. That afternoon, when Rowan and Celia left for what they called board meetings, the same ones that always stretched late into the evening, I told the house staff I wasn't feeling well. I retreated to my room, closed the door, and waited until the house fell quiet. Then I slipped out the side gate, every step quickening with the thought that at any moment, someone might notice. The property was 30 minutes outside town, an overgrown stretch of land with a sagging barn. From the road, it looked abandoned, forgotten. But as I approached, my stomach turned. The weeds were trampled, the locks on the barn new, the doors freshly painted. I pushed the door open, and the air inside hit me like a wave, mold, dust, but also the faint metallic tang of paper ink. Stacks of boxes lined the walls. Ledger books, files, old photographs. It was an archive, hidden away where no one would think to look. My hands shook as I opened one of the boxes. Inside were folders labeled with names I recognized. Names of elders from the community. Their pensions, their homes, their wills. All of it rerouted, funneled, twisted to Rowan's advantage. He hadn't just tried to erase me. He had built an empire on the quiet erasure of others. I stumbled back, bile rising in my throat. My hands brushed against another box. Inside were photographs. Smiling couples, gray-haired women, men in wheelchairs. Caretakers, spouses, founders of small businesses. Every one of them had been signed away, their legacies stolen. And then I saw her. Mura. Her photo was clipped to a file, her signature forged. Her estate redirected into Rowan's accounts. She hadn't been paranoid. She had been targeted. My knees nearly gave out, but I grabbed the file, tucking it into my dress. Proof. Real proof. Enough to pierce through the lies. Then I heard it. The crunch of gravel outside. Panic surged through me. Someone was here. I ducked behind a stack of boxes. Heart pounding so loudly I was sure it would give me away. The barn door creaked open. Footsteps echoed in the wood. Slow, deliberate. The man's voice hummed softly, tuneless, as if unconcerned. Rowan. I held my breath, praying the shadows held me. He walked past, humming, his hand trailing along the boxes. Then he stopped. You always were too curious, he murmured, almost to himself. His voice carried, smooth and cruel. My stomach lurched. Did he know I was there? Or was he talking to the ghosts of all those files, all those people he'd erased? After an eternity, the footsteps retreated. The barn door slammed shut. The lock clicked. Silence. I waited, every muscle aching, until I was sure he was gone. Then I bolted. Out the back window, across the field, running until my lungs burned. That night, I hid the stolen file beneath the floorboards of my room. My whole body trembled with fear, but also with determination. I had seen his crimes. I had proof now. Viewers, let me ask you something. If you discovered your spouse wasn't just betraying you, but stealing the lives and legacies of innocent people, would you go straight to the authorities? Or would you hold it close, waiting for the right moment? Tell me, because in that moment, I knew rushing in would get me crushed. I had to be patient. The next day I reached out in secret. Using the payphone at the edge of town, I called a quiet ally, a woman named Dr. Salome Vega, a retired lawyer who had once fought against financial exploitation cases like these. She answered with a wary voice, but when I told her Mara's name, her tone shifted. Within hours, she agreed to meet me in a diner 2 towns over. Her hair was silver, her eyes sharp. She listened without interrupting as I slid the file across the table. When she finally spoke, her words were like a blade. "This is enough to open a freeze. But only if we're careful. If he suspects, he'll bury it before we can touch it." That was the first moment I felt the ground shift in my favor. With her help, we filed a discreet request. A hold on Rowan's shadow accounts, small enough not to raise alarms but strong enough to stop him from moving assets overnight. For the first time I had drawn blood. But victories come at a cost. That evening, as I returned home, Rowan was waiting in the parlor. He stood by the fire, glass in hand, his eyes glittering like steel. "Long day?" he asked softly. My throat closed. I nodded, forcing calm. "Yes. Just errands." He swirled the glass, the firelight catching its edge. Then he turned, his smile too wide, too knowing. "I do hope," he said, his voice smooth as silk, "that you haven't been wasting your time. You see, Arden, allies have a way of turning into liabilities. And I'd hate for you to confuse the two." My blood froze. He knew. But worse. His words hinted at something darker. My mysterious helper, the one who had circled that line in red ink, might not be a stranger at all. It might be someone sitting closer to him than I ever imagined. That's where I'll leave you tonight. So tell me, if the person secretly helping you could just as easily be setting a trap, would you still trust them? Or would you cut ties and stand alone? Share your thoughts below, and make sure to subscribe because Chapter 9 is where the mask begins to slip, and the truth will not stay buried. Chapter 9. The lights were too bright, too sharp. They glittered off the chandeliers above, spilling across polished tables and silver cutlery. The air hummed with chatter, glasses clinking, polite laughter rising in waves. On the surface, it was just another one of Rowan's charity galas. His favorite theater for power. But I knew tonight wasn't theater. Tonight was war. I stood at the edge of the room, heart pounding so hard I thought the crowd might hear it. My dress clung too tightly. My palms were damp. In my shoe, hidden like a secret heartbeat, was the folded file. Mara's name, her forged signature, the paper trail Rowan couldn't erase. Dr. Vega's voice echoed in my mind. "Don't speak too much. Don't give them reason to cut you off. Let the evidence speak. Paper doesn't tremble the way people do." Rowan moved through the room like a king, shaking hands, charming with his perfect smile. Celia hovered nearby, every inch the loyal mother-in-law, her eyes scanning the crowd for weakness. They were untouchable, or so they believed. Then Rowan's gaze found me. His smile didn't falter, but his eyes sharpened. He raised his glass, a silent toast across the room. To the crowd it looked affectionate. To me it was a warning. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to move closer. The speeches began, donors and board members taking turns praising Rowan for his contributions to the community. He soaked it in like sunlight. Then, with a theatrical pause, he invited me to the podium. "My wife," he said smoothly, "would like to say a few words." It wasn't an invitation. It was a test. My feet felt like stone, but I walked forward. Every step was a drumbeat of fear and resolve. I reached the podium, gripping its edge as the crowd looked up at me, expectant. I could have told them everything. I could have screamed the truth about the stolen estates, the forged wills, the erased names. But Dr. Vega was right. Outrage can be dismissed as hysteria. Paper cannot. So instead I smiled. My voice trembled only slightly. "I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight," I began, scanning the crowd. "These events remind us of the importance of legacy, of protecting the stories of those who built the very foundations we stand on." A ripple went through the crowd. Polite agreement, nods. I let my hand drift, as if by accident, over the file I'd slipped beneath the podium earlier. I unfolded it, just enough for the front row to see. Mara's name. Her photo. Gasps whispered through the front tables. I saw eyes widen, hands clutch pearls. I didn't explain. I didn't accuse. I simply let them see. "Sometimes," I continued, my voice steadying, "the greatest honor we can give is to make sure those stories aren't silenced. That their signatures are preserved, not replaced. That their names live on, not buried." I closed the file slowly, deliberately. Sat it on the podium. Rowan's jaw tightened. Celia's knuckles whitened on her glass. The cracks were showing. He recovered quickly, of course. He strode to my side, his hand sliding possessively across my back. To the crowd it looked like affection. To me it was a clamp, a warning. "My wife is very passionate," he said with a laugh. His voice rich with condescension. "Sometimes a bit theatrical. She's been under stress, you see. Planning events, adjusting to new responsibilities. But don't we all admire her heart?" Laughter rippled through the room. Nervous, uncertain. Then, from the back of the room, a voice cut through. "Dr. Vega." She rose, her presence commanding despite her age. "Funny thing about passion," she said, her voice carrying. "It tends to leave a trail. Time-stamped. Documented. Finalized only when the truth refuses to stay buried." Hush fell. Eyes darted between Rowan and me. The file sat there on the podium, a silent witness. Rowan's smile froze. For the first time I saw sweat bead at his temple. Viewers, let me ask you something. If you were in my shoes, standing on that stage with your enemy unraveling in real time, would you press harder in public? Or step back and let the silence do the damage? Tell me in the comments, because in that moment I had to decide. Expose everything now or wait for the cracks to split wide open.